Jobs, Nigeria to establish 774 cottage industries, and deregulation, private sector to take over supply of petroleum products, just as currency in circulation drops by 2.6% to 2.29 trillion naira. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Liakatun Babatunde. Now on Business Express this morning, plans have been finalized by the federal government towards the establishment of cottage industries in the 774 local government areas of the country for enhanced economic well-being and job creation. The Minister of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs, George Akume, announced these while briefing newsmen after presenting his scorecard to the Federal Executive Council.
Every local government will have one industry, and this is based on industrial corridors, and we believe at the end of the day this is capable of employing over 200 people per cottage industry. This is not small industries as such, but we call them cottage, and when you multiply that by 774 local governments, you know the number of people that will be given employment.
Also, there's a green initiative that we're launching. It's an agricultural initiative with the Brazilian government, over $1.1 billion initiative, in which would also help to create jobs in this country, and especially youth, employment.
The presentations of scorecard by members of Nigeria's Federal Executive Council was initiated by President Muhammadu Buhari to not only assess performance of government policies, but to also see the level of implementation. The Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Temipre Silva, says the federal government is very mindful of the likely impact higher petroleum prices would have on Nigerians and is working hard to alleviate these by rolling out an auto gas scheme, which will provide Nigerians with alternative sources of fuel at a lower cost. Explaining the reason for the decision to deregulate the downstream subsector, Temipre Silva says after a thorough examination of the economics of subsidizing petroleum for domestic consumption, the federal government concluded that it was unrealistic to continue with the burden of subsidizing petrol to the tune of trillions of naira every year, considering that the subsidy was benefiting in large part the rich rather than the poor and ordinary Nigerians. The minister stressed that with the regulation, government will no longer continue to be the main supplier of petroleum products, as it will encourage the private sector to take the role of supplier of petroleum products. Now, women in Africa have over the years shown that they play a vital role in agriculture. The fact is based on the role they play in all aspects of food production, from land preparation, planting, harvesting to putting the food on the table. And this is why the federal government, UN agencies and other non-governmental organizations are dishing out palliatives to support women's agricultural activities amid the coronavirus pandemic. Musa Babaliu explains this in our Surviving COVID-19 segment.
On my recent visit to Boko in Benue State, I came across these women. What struck my mind on sighting them was that they must be going for a funeral or some other ceremony, until one of them whispered to me, they are on their way to the farm. Dancing, singing and smiling, even under the scorching hot sun as they carry out tedious tasks of farming. Not only in Benue, but across all farming communities in the country, women are always in the forefront in farming activities. In Kano State, this group of women farmers formed an association with a view to improving their agricultural yields. They are being supported with palliative to boost farming activities amidst the coronavirus pandemic. The support is coming from UNDP through the Women Farmers Advancement Network.
So each farmer will get input, that is seed. They will get pre-emergence and post-emergence pesticide. They will get 30 kg of seed. They will get 4 bags of NPK, and they will get 2 bags of urea. And that's exactly what you need for sustainable rice production. We're going to marry this with extension services very closely with the farmers so that we get the desired output.
In Lokoja, Kogi State, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture distributed palliative to farmers, with women getting the largest share of farming inputs.
We appreciate the government for giving us fertilizer and some food inputs to grow our farm.
In our inputs distribution effort, at least 35% of inputs are targeted for women farmers, in line with targets set in our National Gender Action Plan for Agriculture and the policies aimed at ensuring increased opportunities for women.
As the federal government gets set to introduce heavy-duty farming equipment to smallholder farmers, there is the hope that very soon Nigerian women will not only own a tractor, but operate it themselves.
The African Development Bank, AFDB, has projected in a recent report that Nigeria and the rest of the continent will suffer a gross domestic product GDP loss of $189.7 billion in 2020. The AFDB's African Economic Outlook Supplement released Tuesday noted that pre-COVID-19 estimates of African GDP had predicted a growth of $2.59 trillion for the year. The AFDB says some losses are to be carried over to 2021 as the projected recovery will be partial. And according to the bank, many countries in Africa entered the crisis period with high debt to GDP ratios, which are projected to increase further by up to 10 percentage points beyond the pre-COVID trajectory in 2020 and 2021. The AFDB advised that given the global scale of the COVID-19 pandemic and its repercussions, governments and development partners must respond in a coordinated, targeted and rapid manner to be effective in limiting its impact. Business Express today is going to take a look into what these numbers from the African Development Bank mean for the African continent and Nigeria. Now, joining me via telephone, we have Dr. Chibo Christopher Anthony, but then we shall be joining him after this break.
Let me assure Nigerians that all COVID-19 intervention funds are safe in the Treasury single account, and that government is still open to donations in this regard. Government has opened special accounts with 5 commercial banks which are directly linked to the Treasury single account. Donated funds are safe in the Central Bank of Nigeria. For verifiable information about the funds and other financial obligations of the federal government, please contact us directly at the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The account details for the donations are as follows.
Now, Dr. Anthony Chibo Christopher is an economics and business strategist, and he joins us via a telephone conversation. You're welcome to Business Express this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for welcoming me.
Okay. So in what context will you situate the alarm raised by the African Development Bank in its recent outlook for 2020, warning that African economies may collectively contract by 3.4% in the worst-case scenario?
Could you repeat the first part of the question? I didn't hear you. I'm very sorry.
Okay, the first part of the question, how would you situate the alarm raised by the AFDB in this recent outlook for 2020?
Oh, the alarm raised? It's necessary. It's very necessary. You know, the same AFDB had put up an economic outlook report for Africa, but what they put up recently, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, was a supplement. And the supplement was necessary because of COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic. This COVID-19 pandemic has distressed the global economy, particularly African countries. And so it was necessary to give an alarm because most growth projections before have turned into negative projections right now. So it was very important and people took note. The same report also gave recommendations on what African countries should do. And so it wasn't just an alarm, it was a recommendations on how to mitigate the current socio-economic, and financial situations that most African countries see themselves in now. Very necessary.
Okay, let's look at this recommendation and observations. This very report speaks of fiscal deficit, increasing debt levels, among other issues that are affecting the continent, and also foreign investors' flight to safety nets. Now, what strategic options do you think are available for African countries to redeem this situation?
The normal options are always available, but there are more. But let's start with the normal monetary policy changes, fiscal policy changes, and direct intervention. However, these things have to be done. Now I'm answering your question. They have to be done through effective response structures. And that's where we are not too good because, take for instance, fiscal policies. Now, how effective are any fiscal policy you're going to put in response to COVID-19 going to reach the population? For instance, you want to actually mitigate the effects, and you want to spread money around. You want to help businesses, but how good are your data? The data you have. What is the demographic data you have? For instance, now we have Africa has a very large informal sector. Now, how big is this informal sector in figures? That's one. Two, how are you going to reach the informal sector? In what structures? So let's give an example. Does everybody in the formal sector have a bank account? Can we really answer that question positively? How many bank accounts do we have? How many people have a bank account? And to what sectors are these bank accounts valid in? You need your response structures in health to be valid. You need your response structures in monetary policy to be valid. You need your socioeconomic data. So data, and we're lagging behind. So whatever we do, you find that central banks across Africa with goodwill have tried to mitigate it by spreading money, by helping businesses, by reducing taxes. These have been done and must be commended. But have they really had the effect? that they were supposed to have? I think not, and not because nobody wanted them to have that effect, but because our response structures were not that good, are still not that good, and so that's the lesson we should learn.
So I'm happy actually that you're bringing the issues of data and of course the issues of the demographics in the course of this discussion. Now there is talk of extreme poverty to about 49.2 million Africans, and with an estimated 24.6 jobs lost due to the coronavirus pandemic alone. Now, with all the suggestions by the bank, you are a strategist. How effective can we get this?
Just your last statement, how can we do what, sorry?
How effective can we get the suggestions now by the AFDB to work for the African people and also for the Nigerian people?
You know what, economists and strategists like myself risk sounding like broken records, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is that it's the main things we've been thinking about we need to get done. You need to increase productivity. You need to increase productivity. You need to address obstacles to the business environment. You need to increase your productive base, increase levels of industrialization. Haven't you heard this before? Many times, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
And that's the only way. And you need to invest in your human capital. You need to invest in your people. Throw money or get the latest ideas out there. Now, of course, we know they're all tech in the fourth industrial revolution. And throw human capacity building around amongst your population. Get somebody from the villages of the north, from the south. Get the youth from everywhere, and I'm talking about Africa. And pour information. Train them in skills of the digital information technology. And it may look like it's not working now, but 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you now see that you have human resource with the necessary skills to live, to earn, and to move forward.
Okay,
and,
so
in addition to this, you must industrialize. There's no other story again. You must industrialize. You must produce. You must produce what the world wants. And you must sell what you produce, and you must also sell within an economic base that is ready to buy from you.
So in the context of all these, what will be your opinion on the policy options to mitigate this virus by the federal government that has put in place this recent strategy plan, that is the sustainability plan?
There are many options. Some of them have started already. The central bank recently has rolled out a lot of palliatives and a lot of policies that are supposed to reach the people. What I am saying and what I want to emphasize here is that it doesn't take too much observation to see that with all the goodwill we have, I'm talking of the government has towards the people, it's not the effects. The effects, okay, tax relief, how is that really going to affect the informal economy? How many people are really paying, are actually registered to pay taxes? Now, direct giving of money to the population, how did you do that? How are we going to do that in a better way? Is it through the BVM system? I really expected a more effective use of the
Okay, let me just take this one last question also. There's the issue of demographics versus GDP on the other hand, with Nigeria and DR Congo expected to top the number of possible poverty cases. So what are you seeing as the necessary steps Nigeria needs to take in curtailing the disparity between population and GDP growth on the other hand? Can you just wrap it up for us so we can end the discussion?
Yeah, okay. Disparity will be to migrate as many people as possible from the informal economy into the formal economy so that the GDP figures actually reflect reality. Right now, GDP figures do not reflect reality. inflation figures and all the rest of the figures, especially GDP, back to GDP, don't reflect the reality. And if it's going to reflect reality, then the more people that are actually captured in the formal economy, the better. So, register people, get people, train people, get people into having bank accounts, support them in opening businesses, support the value chains they're all involved in, and you buy this and get them to pay tax and see the importance of paying tax and use their tax money to reinvest back in them for their own human resource development.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chibo. I'm afraid we do not have any more time on this conversation, but we should be talking with you on these issues subsequently. Thank you for coming on the program this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
The Nigerian Stock Exchange finished Wednesday's trading session on a bullish note with investors gaining 94.2 billion naira. The all-share index advanced by 0.75% to 24,278.07 basis points to close at with the market capitalization also at 12.664 trillion naira. Month to date fell minus 0.85%, while the year to date stood at also a negative of 9.55%. Meanwhile, early morning trade has been slow. Activities are yet to pick up since the market opened this Thursday morning. Now, moving on, U.S. stocks were up slightly Wednesday in the last hour of trade, but fell off their best levels as investors monitor an acceleration of coronavirus infections in the U.S. that could undermine the strength of the economic rebound. Let's take this report by Bosty Abel.
As the coronavirus pandemic increases in figures, it has continued to weigh on investor sentiment even as business continue to open globally. Africa's stocks begins trade for 9th July mostly mixed, with South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Tunisia's Tunidex and Namibia's overall index posting gains. Shares in Asia were higher in early trading of 9th July as Chinese inflation data for June was released. Mainland Chinese stocks, which have already seen a strong performance so far this week, continue to lead gains among the region's major markets. The Shanghai Composite gained 1.02%, Hang Seng Index added 0.07% and Nikkei rose 0.4%. Futures contracts tied to the major U.S. stock indices held steady during the overnight session Wednesday evening, just hours after the Nasdaq Composite clinched its 25th record close for 2020. Dow Jones Industrial Average Futures fell 27 points, implying an opening move around the flat line. S&P 500 and Nasdaq Futures pointed to similar muted action Thursday morning. European markets are expected to open higher as investor focus swing to the potential economic recovery and earnings season gets underway.
We're still in the market, the early morning market in Nigeria. And let's take a graphic representation of commodities this morning around the globe. Now the Central Bank of Nigeria has been trying to unify the currency as advised by the IMF and the World Bank. Let's see how the Naira is faring this Thursday morning outside the official window. This is where we end this episode of the program. Don't forget you can access these and all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can also communicate with us on Twitter. The handle is NTA News Now. The hashtag is BizExp. We value your feedback. Do join us again tomorrow, Friday, for another package. As we continue to fight against COVID-19, remember to keep social distance while the lockdown is gradually and also facing out, and always wash your hands with soap under running water frequently. Business Express returns Friday at 3 p.m. I am Leah Katun Babatunde.